This is a video about wavetable synthesis. It will be using the AE Modular, which you can see just hiding in the background a little bit to the left. But I just wanted to do why it's called a wavetable. If you imagine this is a spreadsheet, for most of you that will be aware of spreadsheets, and you have a table, so you'd have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. That would be, in our particular instance, when I use the wavetable oscillator with the AE Modular, they've got 7 tables available. And so in this case, it'd be 7 columns. And then in each column, you've got 8 different waveforms. So it could be, and I have to say I don't know, and I haven't checked, and I don't really bothered, you'd get 7 different waveforms. And I'm just trying to draw different waveforms just to give you some idea. And the thing is, being digital, these can be the traditional sawtooth, the square wave. They don't do pulse modulation because it's a sample-based thing. You'd have to do that afterwards. So that's supposed to be a little one to be a pulse as opposed to a square wave. And so what you would do is, if you were on wavetable 1 in this instance, I'm just making this up, like I say, because this isn't what's actually in the AE Modular wavetable synth. But in that one table, there'd be these 8 different waveforms that I've drawn. That's roughly a sawtooth. I was trying to do a sine wave there, but mine was a bit wonky. And in a lot of digital oscillators these days can do some very strange waveforms. And that could be a triangle wave there, actually thinking about it, even though it looks a bit wobbly U-shaped. But you've got 8 waveforms available. So on the AE Modular, you've got 8 waveforms available in each table. And one of the things that we'll get onto very shortly is we'll demonstrate how you can move between them, and that's what makes wavetable synthesis brilliant. I would highly recommend getting into wavetable synthesis because it gives you a lot of sonic options, really. So that's enough for this bit. Let's get to the AE Modular. Right, so here we go. Very basic setup. I'll put my pen down. You can see, as I mentioned, we're on wavetable 1. Now, I'll just move the camera slightly so that you can see it a bit better, because that will be quite important for understanding what's going on. I've got to try not to bang my head on it now. So as I said, we've got 7 banks, and you can do that by the table knob. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're now on table 7. And each table does contain different waveforms. There are a lot of wavetable synthesizers out there. Obviously, probably the most famous, the original inventor of it was the PPG. I think it was the Wave Term, but that might have been one of the later models. And you can have a lot more waveforms, and they can obviously offer slightly different things. One of the things the AE Modular doesn't do is you can't voltage control that change between the tables. You can only, as I was showing you that column of oscillators, a column of waveforms, sorry, you can only do those between those, I say only, but you can go between those 8 waveforms. You can't switch between wavetables. Some wavetable synthesizers you can. So I'm not going to demonstrate every single waveform. I think we'd be here for the rest of the day. I'll turn the sound up. What sounds pretty much like a basic sawtooth. And you can see one of the things I love about the wavetable oscillator, you can see the thing's red. Find out change between the waveforms. actually voltage control that being AE Modular, so let's do that. Absolutely longer one. That's why you don't move things. Someone gone through the hole in the back of the case. This is a very old case, you can tell because it hasn't got the divider in it. The modern cases have got a divider, 2 rows in, because it makes it change the connecting possibilities of the cases. That's why I'm keeping this case for doing videos with in the future. Right, so I've plugged that in. I've got a low frequency oscillator, which is going very slowly. I'll just speed it up a bit. There you go, and it's out. So it's on a triangle wave. Let's turn it. Yeah, that's correct. Could be wrong. So it'll change any moment, and you can see what it's doing. So let's change the waveform a differently. Let's go the other way. I was incorrect there, wasn't I? So this is pretty much the wavetable equivalent of pulse wave modulation. So you're getting an LFO just gradually changing the waveform, and you can change that wave mod with this knob here. So let's make it go mad. How mad is this going to go? I've just realised what it's by. I'll just change it and I'll tell you about what's by in a moment. Hang on, let's put it there. Okay. So that's going fairly slowly. Obviously you can do it like pulse width modulation, you can do it as fast or as slow as you like. I'll turn it up a bit. So I can control it with this wave modulation knob. Now I'll explain why I had to change what wave I was on. There wasn't much happening because you've got a little switch here, which is pretty unique to the Wavetable's oscillator within the AE. If you've got bipolar and unipolar, unipolar works very much like nearly all the AE modulation, whereas you're working between 0 and 5 volts, so you can only modulate upwards. The higher the voltage, the more modulation you're adding. Bipolar on the wavetables means that what it does, it says, well actually I'm going to start to say 1 volt, I'm just picking a voltage, and I can actually go below that, so you can actually go down as well as up, and you can see what's happening as I go down to the red oscillator. If you remember, I had to turn the knob all the way to the left to get the red sawtooth, and because I'm in bipolar it will go down to that. If I went into unipolar, the lowest one will be the one I've picked, so if I wanted the red one I'd have to turn it to the red one. It just shows you how strong this is. There you go. So now it's only going upwards from the red one. So if I switch it back to bipolar now, actually for half the cycle it's not doing anything because it can't go any lower. So if I turn this up to the middle waveform, go both ways. It'll go down to the red one if I've turned the power up enough, so it's gone up to the blue one, and it's going back down towards the red one now. And if it went to blue, it'd probably go to red. Almost, because you remember it was sort of yellowish just before the red, so if I turn it down, I'll just increase the wave modulation a bit. There you go, so we're now going down to the red one. I'm not sure, yeah, we will go all the way up to the blue one. Okay, and we're scrolling through. And obviously you can use different waveforms, so the more sophisticated low frequency oscillators like the LFO++, or the 2-auto. Some of the third party ones are can be very complex, but you can obviously also use an envelope. So when you press a key, it will go through the same cycle, and so on. so let's get rid of that wave modulation for a moment. So it's whichever one I select now. We're just going to go for a different wavetable just for the hell of it. So let's go to wave. Right, let's do wavetable 5. So I'll just demonstrate wavetable 5. I don't think there's quite as many waveforms as that, at least that I could detect. So let's put it back into bipolar mode. Oh no, I did left it in there. Let's turn some wave modulation on. Now what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to put it in square wave on the LFO, so it should just oscillate between two waveforms. Okay, so a very versatile oscillator, because of course bear in mind, of course, being modular, that you can now just put it through anything like before. So let's put that through the MS-20 oscillator filter. Sorry, I do get all excited when I'm doing a video, but like I said before, it's I'm thinking about what I'm going to say rather than what I'm going to do, what I'm doing. Right, so we're in low pass. And obviously we can play with the frequency of the wavetable, so it is a regular oscillator. You can put your CV in from your keyboard or your sequencer. One of the things why it's being fairly quiet is one of the things to mention on frequency is that you actually have a frequency modulation input, just like you did with the wavetable, and exactly the same thing. You've got unipole and bipole. So again, you can either be like the traditional AE Modular, where you can only go upwards from the base frequency of the oscillator. So, well, shall I demonstrate? Let's do that. Now have I shut it up? What's made it silent? Oh, I've killed it. Let's make it just the oscillator, just to make life a bit easier. Put the low frequency oscillator back. Just turn that down a little bit. Right, so if I leave it on unipole, it'll only go upwards. Okay, so I'll turn it up a bit. And I'll now switch to bipole. See, the base frequency is now low. If I use a can you hear? This is the main frequency. When I turn the oscillation on, it'll actually go below this frequency. Okay, and if I switch to unipole, this will be as low as it'll go. Okay, just do bipole again, just to show I'm not being silly. I'll just change the table just for the hell of it. Just switch back to unipole. Back to bipole again. Okay, so that's pretty much what wavetable synthesis is. You've got choice of waveforms, you can modulate between them. I'm pretty much sure all wavetable synths can do that, modulate between them, the group of waveforms in that, what I showed you as an example as a column. And some of them will let you modulate between the tables across the, in effect, across the row. If I bring up a piece of paper back, I'm just going to turn that over. Right, bring this piece of paper back, it says, just making sure it shows in the camera. In the AE, we can just modulate the column, whatever's in the seventh thing. Some wavetable synths will let you modulate crosswards as well, so whatever waveforms it. And I think I've seen a synth with like 250 odd waveforms, and I bet you some of them sound awfully alike. But it could be one of these things where it'd be quite clever if, let's say, if you were doing this column, there was lots of different shapes of pulse width. So there was a little narrow one, and then everything in between to full square wave. And then it could, if you modulated across that, then obviously you've got pulse width modulation over the digital oscillator. But anyway, as I say, whether that can't be done in AE land at the moment, but it doesn't really matter because you can do it properly with an analog VCO. But what the wavetable synth does, wavetable oscillator does in AE land, is it gives you access to some quite digital sounds, as you heard a few. I'm just going to change to a different one. Yeah, so there's everything from quite nasty to some, what I think is quite a nice sawtooth in the table one, number one, location one if you like. And I usually put it with another oscillator sometimes to give it a bit of oomph underneath, although it's got quite a good bass end. It's certainly better than some digital oscillators I've played with. And but I find it quite useful for lead lines, so add a bit of texture. And of course, if you get a lot of harmonics on some of those digital waveforms, they do really well with resonance on the filter, which was just a little bit of a demonstration that you had. When I was playing out. So I'm not going to do any piece of music or anything, but I just thought, that's all the basics of wavetable synthesis is. The complications come in on how much more capabilities whatever wavetable synth you've got or have got to play with can do in terms of what it can do to modulate, and obviously how many waveforms it's got available, and so how big the wavetable is, if you like. But it's a very common source of synthesis now, and I think it deserves to be. It's got its own merits, and I mean, doing the equivalent to pulse width modulation, cross table modulation, whatever you want to call it, is good fun, and it makes some very nice, rich, complex sounds. So I'll play out just by fiddling a bit with it, putting the oscillator back, putting the filter back on again.